Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Welcome to My World. I am Dr. Kristen, and joining me today is Gina Jenkins, who's going to talk to me about narcissism. And you guys are going to get to eavesdrop, and it's really going to be amazing. I've gotten to talk to Gina a little bit about this already, so get excited. In terms of who our guest is, let me offer a brief introduction before I turn the mic over to her. Gina Jenkins is a wife, a mother of three, a yoga and a bar instructor who I wish lived closer because I need both of those things. She's a public speaker and a joy-building transformational coach. Don't we all want one of those? She owns both Yada Yoga and She Incorporates, where she offers different packages for people seeking support in various ways. Her message is that deep healing and restored, joyful relationships are available to all, even the narcissist. For more information, you can check out all of her stuff in the show notes. She's warm and bubbly and chatty, as you'll see in a few minutes. So if any of this resonates with you, please make sure to reach out. But now, without further ado, I want to turn it over. Gina, hello. That word is big. Talk to me about this. Talk to me about narcissism.
Well, it's a big word and there's so much negative messaging around it. And as I began my healing journey, I didn't even recognize that I was one, but I was stuck in infantile behavior as I began to study that brain science.
Okay.
And see the gaps in my emotional maturation process. So that was really how it began, and saw that, oh, wow, wow, wow. And I'm not that same person at all. So I just want to be out there giving positive messaging around how a narcissist can change.
So let's rewind just a little bit. So what did your behavior as a narcissist look like? Like, who were you before this process?
So I was very like many narcissists in public, in the public view, we can look very put together.
Okay.
And very gregarious personalities. Narcissists tend to be the ones that we put in those leadership roles because they have the personalities that tend to be more extroverted and gregarious. They can take leadership roles in guiding people and taking on responsibility and looking like they can handle. I looked like I had a great life outside of the home, but where that behavior really showed up was in the interpersonal relationship, which is typically where you see it. And so getting married, and I didn't have inherent self-worth. I didn't have proper attachment as an infant. So I was constantly being challenged with my husband not doing something right or how I thought it should be. And there's so much pain in not attaching properly and what we recognize with narcissist behavior is that often the overreaction that comes. So it was constant overreaction. The other key point of narcissism that was me, self-justifier, cannot take personal responsibility.
Okay, so the attachment thing that you're talking about mostly is both emotional and physical, I'm assuming, at really young developmental ages.
Correct.
So,
and it can be only emotional. You can have a caregiver who met your physical needs, but emotionally wasn't available and didn't build joy in the brain, because we're creatures of joy, and joy is what fuels the growth of the baby's brain.
Okay. So that then led to not really understanding who you were on a level and not finding any joy within yourself.
Exactly.
So it then became kind of everyone else's job to give you joy. Is that a decent
and
summary?
one of the bigger problems, it wasn't even so much around joy, it was unable to maintain emotional control. So people that are stuck in infancy have an inability to maintain emotional control. Everything.
Okay.
Now, I am the extrovert and I fall into, and I'll use terms I learned in Journey Group, I fall more into the predatory when I'm in enemy mode, or when I have an emotional upset, I become more predatory. The other thing you'll see though is possum, where the person will disengage, hide. So those two camps, mine was more expressive. Just who I am, my personality. I believe narcissists can also fall into that possum camp and not be so extroverted in their behavior, but be more introverted, withdrawn.
Because it's
Emotionally
still at that
disengaged.
point, it's still a little bit about power,
It's
and
about
that
power. It's about winning.
it's about winning. Okay.
It's about winning with the narcissist. Whether they realize it or not, they are approaching every relationship to be on top, to be in control, to win the argument every time.
Okay. My experience with narcissism is as a friend to children of narcissists, primarily. So in my social work program, I certainly read about it. I worked with it, but I've never worked with narcissist clients. So all of my interaction is much more anecdotal and personal, especially in terms of the effects of narcissism upon children
Exactly.
and
Yes.
and how that works and kind of what that looks like. So when we first met and you said that, people, I fundamentally believe everybody can change, but I'd never heard somebody be so blatant about the fact that narcissists can redeem themselves. It's often talked about in popular media, and I think even in some social science circles and some therapeutic circles, as like one of the things that can't really change. Which I believe that everyone has a capacity to change if you want to do the work. And so that's it. So what you mentioned, getting married. So that was obviously, I'm assuming, having somebody in your space all the time who expected certain emotional things from you and you couldn't give them to him in a way that was a big enlightenment point. Is that what kind of drove you to your therapeutic journey?
Yeah, I think because I married the classic dismissive, avoidant relational style person,
Okay.
that my spouse was able to go hide immediately, withdrew emotionally and hid, and could stay in the marriage
Okay.
with this emotionally abusive person coming at them. Because I'll be honest that I didn't mean to, and it wasn't intentional, but when someone is so wounded, they inherently wound those close to them when
Yep.
they haven't done that work. And it was him threatening to leave. So after 9 years of marriage, it was him saying, I can't do this any longer. I need a break. And me fully waking up to why would my marriage be ending? Is it that bad? Am I that bad? Is kind of the hunt that I went on to investigate what was driving him away. And that's when all the stories I'd been told about, oh, your mother was told at 7 months pregnant by her doctor if she didn't change her attitude, she was going to lose you, and other stories about her not wanting to be pregnant,
Okay.
that those stories then began to take more substance in my mind. Like, oh, I probably should pay attention to what was really going on. And I went back and did some investigation, and then began, just because I think providentially I am a woman of faith, and I believe I'm being guided and directed in my life by a higher power. And I believe I was led to study this and see where was my starting point to start to grow from. Because I think that's the real key to this, is to elicit any kind of change or transformation, you have to know your starting point. And often the change, the transformation does come around emotional maturity. That building character and maturity, that changes a person.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that if you don't know where to start, is my belief at this point. Is we really need a starting point. And so that studying the brain science and studying that emotional maturation process gives you, there's actual maturity indicators. I would go down the list and see what are the tasks of an infant. The main task of an infant is to receive, to learn to receive. And with joyful caregivers, they are learning that joy is my natural state of being. They get strong identity. They learn that they have power. They matter. They are unique. All the things that the infant is supposed to learn in that 0 to 3 year stage. And you can go down that list and see what your life would look like as an adult if those things didn't take place or weren't passed, if those tasks weren't passed. And that's where you find out your gaps. That's where you can see gaps. It's not easy to look at. It's not easy material to look at or study.
No, but it's one of those things that's very, very simple, but incredibly impossible.
Yes.
And
Growth.
I think so much of personal growth is that, like, the statement of fact is black and white, but the execution is so gray and so emotional. So
Yeah.
I guess, and one of the questions that I know we always talk about in therapeutic situations is, did you have to have both you have to have an internal motivation, like you wanted to have to change for you. But there are some people that also need to hold tension and change for other people as well. So was your husband a part of this process, and in that kind of like you were doing it for your marriage too, or was it a balance? Was there,
Yeah, it was a balance. It was definitely a balance because the world that I was coming from, very strict, somewhat religious boundaries and um, you know, I don't want to say rules, but yeah, essentially rules. And we don't get divorced as Christian people. We don't
right.
get divorced. We make marriage work. And so that was part of it of like I can't be divorced. That's not even within, I'm not allowed to be, as a Christian woman was part of it. But it was also, oh, I have, what I do know about myself is I've been gifted with courage. It looks like more than others. As I've talked and looked around me, I think I was gifted with courage. And so when I began to look and see that I'm not stuck, that this might be my beginning point, but there are ways to grow the brain. There are ways to rewire. There are ways to change. Oh my goodness, I'm going to go down this path because no matter what, I'm going to get better. And I will be better for my children and for my friends and my family and whoever is in my life. So that's my motivation, even now with really challenging circumstances. Again, it's I'm still going to put one foot in front of the other, show up to grow up, to mature, become the woman I'm supposed to be all the way, regardless of what is going on around me, because I just see, I've seen now how much joy I can carry and how good life can get. And I believe it can get better. I believe there's no limits and we can keep going. So why not?
So it sounds like to me that a huge part of your healing journey was abandoning the idea of winning everything, and instead maybe embracing the idea of experiencing things instead of winning them. Is that fair?
That is so fair. And, and it's always a progression, right? We're always on this progression of a healing journey. And having studied Enneagram and personality tests a little bit earlier in life and understanding my design and understanding how I have this natural desire to control,
Mm-hmm.
that's the personality that to show up more fully who I am, I've had to learn to let go and experience. But that's understanding my design. So that's part of the work, is really understanding your design and how you were put forth in this world and how to navigate this life experience.
Yeah, we're all human beings. Not human, we're not, having there's a great C.S. Lewis quote that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
And I
um
believe that so much.
and kind of
Yeah.
what that looks like, and it sounds like that's a real big resonator in your life story. So quick question though, like you've talked a lot about kind of the starting place for someone who might feel like they are experiencing narcissist behavior or whatever, is like a moment of clarity, like really looking inside. Do you have any advice for living with somebody who, or doing life or loving somebody who is a narcissist?
You know what? Because I'm still in the study of the brain science and growing the brain, and I and now facilitate the groups that I was a part of, Journey Group. And what we're looking at in these groups is, because you imagine, it takes a little bit of explanation. I don't think there's an easy answer here. We're talking about character growth. We're
Okay.
talking about maturity and character.
Right.
And in the nuclear family, when you have two really strong, secure caregivers that are giving secure attachment to that child, and that child is coming up in a really strong, safe, loving environment, that the other piece to this that I think is important to talk about, because we hear all kinds of messaging around shame. The brain, scientifically shown, the brain is hardwired for shame. It is an emotion that we have to learn how to process. The brain is hardwired for it. In that loving environment of your nuclear family, you're getting what we would call gentle shame messages, which is that, oh no, honey, we don't do it like that. We do it like this. It's the training that goes on with the warm, consistent, appropriate responses from your mature caregivers that are guiding you through building your character, showing you, oh, you missed the mark here. This is how we do it. Building group identity. This is how we as a people behave and choose to do life. And that is what hopefully, am I getting to my point?
You are. Yes, absolutely.
So what we see, the components in that kind of environment.
Okay.
Hesed love. So Hesed love is that really sticky attachment love of I just love you for your uniqueness, for your individuality, for your specialness. You can misbehave, but I'm going to still love you, and I'm going to guide you back to joy, a place of relational circuitry, all on in the prefrontal cortex, able to maintain who you are, make mistakes, but come back, make mistakes, come back. So when you, as an adult living with the narcissist, I believe you have to become very mature yourself and be able to give that Hesed love and have that deep connection where you begin to not allow your narcissist to self-justify or make excuses. Now, that sounds so simple and really like, I don't see that one day you're just going to decide to tell your narcissist to stop self-justifying and that go well. No.
Yeah, it needs to be part of a therapeutic relationship. Like I'm such a big believer in therapy. Like there are a lot of us that spend a whole lot of time going to school to help you learn yourself in a safe environment. So trust us and let us help you. And in terms of doing covenantal relationships, having an outside perspective walk through this with you is probably the emotionally safer than trying to do the work yourself.
Definitely.
Especially with a personality trait like narcissism that is ingrained almost in the DNA, and undoing that is a labor of labor.
Huge. And honestly, I don't know that your spouse is even usually qualified to do that with you.
No, we're not actually qualified to love each other the way any of us deserve. We're just really, really lucky that we knock around and manage to do it anyway. It's one of the beautiful things about humans that we are bizarrely resilient, considering how much we hurt each other all the time.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I think at the end of the day, the narcissist has to understand how loved they are inherently, and it has nothing to do with another person.
No, and my gosh, that statement applies to everybody, but for sure somebody who hasn't attained that sense of grounded love in how it works. I could talk to you about this forever, but I'm going to hit pause here. My viewers are very used to that phrase. So I'm going to hit pause here and just say, Gina, thank you so much for your time and sharing your emotions and expertise and story with our viewers. Folks, if you want to talk to Gina more, how to get a hold of her, again, is in all the show notes below. If you've got specific questions about what she can teach you or look through or whatever, I know Gina wants to talk about this forever. It's her life passion. So please go ahead and get in touch. That is all for this edition of Welcome to My World. I will see you next time.